What's going on, everybody? Hope you're all having a wonderful day. I'm James Salvatore, and boy, is it good to be getting back into things here on the channel. You know, with COVID, it's been a little bit tough, but hey, you know what? We're gonna go back into things full steam ahead. Today, I have a beautiful solar beam yellow metallic AMG GTC here for you. And like always, I'm gonna be telling you some things you need to know about the car, and then we're gonna take it out on the road and see how it drives. But before we get into the video, be sure to smash that like button because it really helps us small creators out a lot. And be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell notification to be alerted when I post my future videos. On the channel, I typically do new car reviews, new car comparisons, classics, exotics. So if that's your thing, be sure to stick around. And with that, cue the beauty shots. The AMG GT class has been out for a few years at this point, and you can either get them in a soft top convertible or the coupe model, as you can see here. Now, the GTC kind of falls in the middle of the lineup between the AMG GTR and the AMG GTS. Now, what this gets over the GTS is a power boost and the wider track from the GTR in the rear, as well as some other suspension bits. And under the hood of the AMG GTC, you'll find a 4-liter bi-turbocharged handcrafted V8 from AMG that produces 550 horsepower and 502 foot-pounds of torque with a dry sump oil lubrication system mated to a 7-speed dual-clutch transmission. This makes this car good for 0 to 60 in just 3.6 seconds. For suspension, you have electronically controlled shock absorbers with 3 stages of damping. In addition to that, with the AMG GTC, you get active rear wheel steering and a wider track in the rear from the AMG GTR, helping make this car feel a little bit more responsive in the corners. You even get the hydraulic motor mounts that firm up in the sportier modes for more direct engine response. And you have an optional carbon ceramic braking system on this car. As you can tell from hearing specs like that, this thing is a serious piece of kit. But kind of similar to a 911, with the AMG GT, Mercedes has definitely kept in mind keeping this car somewhat practical so that you could daily drive it with ease. I mean, you come around to the back here, you'll find kind of like a hatchback setup, and it has 10.1 cubic feet of cargo storage, which is pretty good, especially for, you know, pretty much basically a supercar. I mean, I was able to fit all my camera gear back here. Absolutely no problem at all. But let's go take a look at the inside of this cabin because, man, it is beautiful. On the inside, for the price point that this car sits at, I think Mercedes did an excellent job with this interior. Everything you look, feel, and touch is high quality Alcantara or high quality Napa leather. I mean, you know, it's just a very beautiful cabin, and these seats have a nice amount of bolstering. You can actually adjust it upper and lower, because in certain cars you don't have that ability, and you don't realize how important that is until you're either too big or too small for the seat. You know, looking around, this is leftover from last year. In the 2020 model, they brought the new digital gauge cluster and the new Mercedes infotainment system in the car, but everything else is exactly the same. For the most part. I mean, there is absolutely no difference in performance between last year's model and this year's model. That's why I'm still doing this review as a new car, because it basically is. And if you're interested in this car, Mercedes-Benz of Danbury, Connecticut has this car listed for over $20,000 less off MSRP, which is a huge savings, especially if you're looking for one of these. But you know what? Enough talking about this thing. Let's get this thing out on the road and see how it drives. Getting into the GTC, immediately, like, what hits you is the character that this car has. I mean, it's obnoxious, but I love it. You know, when you downshift and you hear those, you know, those cracks, those pops, and you hear the roar from the V8, you know, it just puts a smile on your face right away. And to me, having a smile on your face while you're driving a car like this, especially at this price point, is the whole reason why you buy one. Now, I'm kind of going around town right now, you know, in a city environment to try to feel what it would be like to live with this thing on a daily basis. And, you know, it rides a little bit more on the firmer side compared to something like a 911 Carrera, but it's not too bad where it beats you up. Now, one thing that you realize right away is, like, you know, how far back you sit in this car. Seeing that this is mid-front mounted V8, you know, you sit really, really far back in the car, almost right over the rear axle. And, you know, looking out over this long hood is, you know, just something to get used to, but I like it. I like it. It's just very different. You know, another thing that I really appreciate about this too is it genuinely feels like a complete car. You know, there's nothing where I feel like, you know, looking around this thing that Mercedes has skipped out on. You know, they have all the major things that you need in a sports car slash entry-level supercar, you know, between, you know, power, the dual clutch transmission, and overall just build quality. I mean, Mercedes has some of the best in the business, period. I mean, everything that you look, feel, and touch in this vehicle feels high-end. There is barely, if not any, hard plastics in this car. Having everything in the center stack here, all your adjustments, really is nice, you know, because you can adjust everything, you know, right on a whim. Like, you know, go over into comfort mode, then you don't hear anything. I will say I don't really, you know, it says that there is 3 different stages of adjustability between the shocks. I don't really feel too much of a difference, especially in town, between Comfort and Sport Plus. I mean, there is a slight difference, but you kind of wish there was a little bit more of a difference. It's definitely pretty firm for around town. Let's give it a little power, shall we? Woo! Wow, this thing really pulls. And that sound just, oh man, it just adds a certain level of character to this car. It's exciting. First thing that comes to mind is this car is exciting. And it feels so planted and well sorted on the road. Now, right away, comparing this to something like the Carrera 4S, I will say there is significantly less turbo lag. I could definitely feel that, you know, having that V8, you already have a lot more low-end torque, but that hot V configuration, there is very, very minimal, little to no turbo lag in this car whatsoever. I mean, it's apparent right off the shot. Wow. This thing just goes. Once again, guys, very planted, very confident. And the dual clutch transmission in this car is definitely pretty much on the same level as the PDK transmissions, for those of you who are wondering. The shifts are smooth and they're very responsive. I mean, there's little to no delay at all, just like you would expect from a Porsche car. You know, Mercedes in the past, you know, used to get a lot of flag for their dual clutch transmissions, especially like back in the SLS days, you know, where they were a little bit laggy and clunky and whatnot. That is definitely not an issue in the AMG GT here. But it's planted, it's confident. It doesn't feel like, you know, it's going to step out on you. Because with a lot of these high horsepower rear wheel drive cars, sometimes the rear ends are just all over the place. But this thing just feels like it means business. It just gets up and goes. I'm sure if you wanted it to be playful and you turned off all the stability control and whatnot, if you're on a track, you know, it would do some mega slides. But, you know, obviously on public roads, you just want to put the power down. And I really like these seats. I mean, it gives you just the right amount of bolstering, and you could kind of adjust it to your needs, because you can adjust the upper and the lower bolsters to come closer or go out farther, which if you're a bigger or smaller guy, it makes this seat a little bit more versatile. I hate cars that have really narrow bolsters and with no adjustment. You definitely notice the rear steering too. I mean, you know, this car is nice and responsive. On turn in, like, you know, it's right there. It's very responsive. I mean, the littlest inputs get translated into the road, and I'm a big stickler for that. I don't like it, you know, when you don't really have an idea of what the front end of the car is doing. Oh man, and those downshifts, those are just on point. They really are. Wow, just take a look at this view. For years, Mercedes was struggling with having a flagship car though, You know, before the SLS, it was the SL that was the Mercedes flagship car, but it was never really quite a driver's car. It kind of felt like, you know, a big, heavy GT car. You know, it was still a nice car, but it wasn't what this is. With the AMG GT, Mercedes really has a real driver's car. This car feels special too. I mean, you drive by people in this thing and it's breaking necks left and right. I mean, it really sticks out. And those cracks and those pops, this car just has so much theater. We're going around a twisty back road right now. I mean, this car just feels so composed and so well sorted. I mean, certain cars, you know, you get into these sports cars, especially some of the stiffer ones, they bounce on the road a lot, and it, you know, it gets annoying, it gets old, you know, the harshness of the road gets transferred through your body, and before you know it, you drive these cars for a half hour and you want to get out. That's not the case. You know I said this car is firm around town, but, you know, once you get out to a nice back road, this thing just speaks to you. It really does. Let's do park. Wow. When you get into these high horsepower cars, you got to understand one thing. You know, if you plan on just using it on public roads, you really don't want anything over 550 horsepower if you want something that you could use 100% of it. I mean, this car has just the right amount of power to enjoy this thing, you know, fully on a back road. Whereas, you know, if you had something with 650, 750 horsepower, you can't really go anywhere with it. Once you're out of second gear, you know, you're going way too fast. I mean, this, downshift it. Oh, man. But, you know, looking out over this long hood, hearing the sound of that V8 roar, it feels special. It really does. Everything about this is what you want out of a driver's car. It sounds amazing. The shifts are instantaneous. I mean, this dual clutch is right where it needs to be. The feedback that you get from the road is there. You know, it's not a car, you know, it's not like a lot of other modern cars where you've lost that sense of connection to this car. You definitely feel connected. And this power plant, this 4-liter bi-turbo V8, is definitely a special motor. You know, you will definitely feel like this is a special car every time you get in it. Some things that, you know, I'd say are some drawbacks compared to something like a 911, because most likely if you're looking to buy this, you're probably comparing it directly to a 911. I do think that the seating position in something like a 911 is a little bit better because you have better visibility. I'm 6'1", so I'm a larger guy, and it's difficult to see out of this car. The windshield, you know, is small. My head's almost at the top of it, and you can't really see much out the rear window. And this car definitely has a few blind spots to it. But that certainly would not deter me from buying this car. I just like to be honest and, you know, non-biased with my reviews. If I'm going to tell you something's good, it's good. But I'm also going to tell you what flaws it has too, because no car is perfect. Overall, you know, would I recommend this car over a 911? And the answer to that is I'm kind of at a draw because I don't like to be biased. I'll just lay out a few pros and cons of getting like a 911 Carrera 4S versus this. Get this if you're looking for something that has a little bit, if you want something that's a little bit more aggressive. If you want kind of like a well-refined muscle car, you know, something with that in-your-face flair, you know, get this, because both of these cars are so well built. You know, it's not like one's built better than the other and you're like, you know, one's nicer than the other. That's not it. I mean, they're both different, but they're almost, in my eyes, kind of on an even playing field. It's just more, it comes down to preference. You know, the driving position, you know, you're far back in the car. With a 911, it's definitely a little bit easier to see out of it, especially, you know, in the twisties and the curves when you're trying to see around corners and whatnot. But in terms of a daily driver, I could easily see this car being just as easy of a daily driver as the 911. You know, I hope eventually one of these days that AMG invites me out to a track to experience one of these cars, because, you know, you really can't experience the full potential of this on the road. But as a road car, they have done an amazing job with this. And you know, I would happily daily drive this every day of the week. Based off of where we've seen the C63 go, this may be one of your last opportunities to get a true V8 sports car experience from Mercedes-Benz, because, you know, we saw the exit of the 6.3 liter naturally aspirated V8, you know, and that was definitely missed. But the next generation may be either electric or it may be a hybrid powertrain, and it just simply won't be the same. So this is one of your last opportunities to, in my opinion, buy a car that's, you know, such a raw, pure sports car experience such as this. So if you're interested in it, this car is located at Mercedes-Benz of Danbury, and they do have a killer deal on this, seeing that it is a leftover car from last year. They got it marked down over $20,000. So if you're interested, be sure to check that out in the comment section. Well, that's all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it for you. If you haven't done so yet, be sure to help me out by hitting that like button. It really means a lot to me. And be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell notification so you don't miss out on my future videos. But before we go, I'd like to say a special thanks to my friends down at Mercedes-Benz of Danbury, Connecticut for making this review possible. They're an awesome, super accommodating, friendly group of people to work with. So if you're in the market for a new Mercedes, I'm gonna leave their contact information in the description below. And with that said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next video.